There are things that just keep us up at night, things that we can't put down, like studying UFOs.
Join us this week for the season finale of Weaponized.
Secrets, cover-ups, and strange phenomena.
UFOs and ideas that challenge reality itself. All these mysteries, all this time. Are we ever going to get to the bottom of these?
My name is George Knapp. I dig into news stories that others can't or won't.
I'm Jeremy Corbell, and for some reason, people tell me things they probably shouldn't. And this is Weaponized.
This is Weaponized, Season 1, Episode 52, the special Liar Liar Pants on Fire edition and season in review. I'm George Knapp, joined by my colleague Jeremy Corbell. So, Jeremy, I thought we were done with Season 1. To quote Don Michael Corleone, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. So what gives?
Yeah, man, we're not done with Season 1. You know, as we do this, we really wanted to give everybody as much as we could with Season 1. However, this is not episode number 51. This is episode number 52.
I missed something. What happened to 51?
Yeah, man, that's top secret. I'm sorry. Episode number 51 is top secret for now, but I guarantee you will be coming out later. 51 is a great number. You have a history with the number 51, don't you?
I do. In fact, I was just up there the other day. Not in the base, of course, on the outside, but we'll talk about that another time. Of course, you know, the news of the week, we got to talk about this report that came out from AARO. It was long anticipated. We all knew pretty much what it was going to be, but I guess I'm surprised how gleeful it was, patting themselves on the back in this report. The related press releases that were released by the Pentagon and AARO, the Pentagon's designated UFO UAP investigative arm. It describes in excruciating detail how hard they worked, all the steps they took, digging and searching high and low in every attic, down in the basement, under the couch cushions, to reach these conclusions that they reach. And boy, oh boy, did they work hard at this. And yet, you know, this final product, it looks like a paper that Bart Simpson wrote the night before it was due. You know, so much of it was bad. UFO World, of course, has been digesting this for a couple of days now, everybody commenting about it and pointing out its many flaws. And I think, Jeremy, we don't want to repeat all that has been said about it because we'd be here for 4 or 5 hours. But, you know, there are some general observations that have been made about how sloppy this work was, sloppy, filled with some pretty glaring errors about very basic facts, like who reviewed this final edit? I mean, Principal Skinner, or, you know, they make these sweeping generalizations, but they don't cite any footnotes. They don't give sources for it, no methods to explain how they reach these conclusions. AARO's former director, Sean Kirkpatrick, has said that, you know, science isn't made on blogs. And then in this report, among the few citations they give, is a UFO blogger and a podcast. What the hell? You know, I think this is cherry-picked content that supported the conclusion that they had when they started down this road.
Yeah, so what you're talking about, George, for our audience is that there was this mandated historical review about the UFO topic. This is supposed to go back to 1943 or 1945 and just really let people know, what do we know about UFOs? So this is a historical review by AARO, our government UFO agency, that was supposed to look back in history and say, what do we know about UFOs? What have been the things that we have seen? That's what was mandated. That's finally what has come out. And I have personally talked with people in Congress that are just, it's incredible to them that they could get away with this. But let's break it down just a little bit for people who don't know the basics. So this is something that was supposed to come out and bring us from A to Z. But there were huge omissions, and it was an absolutely skewed report. This is the DOD and the intelligence community investigating themselves. That's what I found amazing to begin with. The whole reason AARO was founded, the whole reason AARO exists and is working for the American public is because Congress was like, yo, we've been lied to. We have witnesses in the intelligence community testifying to us that there's a cover-up, that UFOs are not only real, but we have reverse engineering programs, and they failed to report them to Congress. So my understanding was like they were going to do their best. If this is their best, it's fucking scary, because what they omitted and the angle in which they took on this was incredible to me. But you, George, tell us about history. When has the government done a report on UFOs that has been honest to the American public?
There was only one. That was the first report from Project Sign, which said, these aren't ours. We don't think they're Russians. We think they might be from up there. And of course, that report was buried. It was destroyed. Hoyt Vandenberg, the general, had read that thing and said, I'm not putting this out. And he destroyed it. And that was pretty much the last honest attempt by a government study to get to the truth. You know, the idea that a small office inside the Pentagon can investigate its parent organization, as well as the entire intelligence community and defense contractors, and get straight answers, is preposterous. The Department of Cover-Ups, after an exhaustive investigation of itself, has determined there was no cover-up. Really? I mean, you investigate yourself and you expect to get the truth? It'd be like assigning OJ to, go after the real killer. Oops, really tried, but, hard to get to the truth, and I came up empty. I'm reminded, I know that people have called this Blue Book 2.0. I'd say it's Condon Report 2.0. The Condon Report was commissioned by the Air Force in the late 1960s. It was supposed to be an independent review of all the UFO evidence by a neutral academic third party. And the first couple of universities that were approached to see, hey, would you do this, said, no thanks. We recognize what this is going to be. The University of Colorado and a guy named Dr. Edward Condon said yes, and they're going to do this impartial study of all the UFO data. The problem with that is that there were these memos that leaked out where they revealed what their intention was. The trick is, they said in these memos, the trick is to make it look like it's impartial, but we know where this is going. And even at that, even with their very slanted approach to going into this project, the data that is inside the report does not match the conclusions. The data showed there really are some genuine unknowns that could not be explained. However, the point of Condon was to get the monkey off the Air Force's back, to give them an excuse to cancel Blue Book and to get Congress off their back. And that's exactly what happened. After the Condon report comes out, Air Force cancels Blue Book. Congress goes back to arguing about budgets. And I think that is the same result that the Pentagon is looking for here. They want this to go away, mainly to get Congress off their backs. And I think a clue is in the media organizations that were invited to this thing. There are only 6 organizations, 6 journalists who were invited to sit in and get the report ahead of time. 2 of those 6 are from the Washington Post. Now, Jeremy, we were in Congress, a couple of weeks ago. You see the Washington Post in every congressional office. They all get them. That is, I think, the real audience for this report is to get Congress, give them an excuse to drop this. We know that the UFO caucus, the people that we talk to on a regular basis, are not going to do it. We know a lot of people inside Congress would like to get this off their back and make it go away for whatever reason. And now I think this gives them an excuse. I can't predict when it'll happen. Maybe it'll wait for AARO Part 2, but at some point soon, we're going to hear members of Congress say, clearly there's nothing to this. We need to move along.
Right. So senators and Congress people have been in communication with us and basically saying, this is a whitewash. This is bullshit. They didn't do what we hired them to do, what we created them to do. And they're not surprised because it is like government, like looking after their own selves and making sure that they get the narrative right. But let's look. The king has no clothes. Let's really look at this. So essentially what we're saying is we read this report. I mean, what is it? 63 page. So the whole report, I printed it, right? So looking through it, reading the whole thing, it is absolutely unbelievably biased and ridiculous. It almost acts as if people are stupid. It acts as if the American public is stupid. It's like, we're just going to repeat these bullshit things along the way with the Roswell report, the final analysis or whatever it is, Project Blue Book. You have the same thing here. Now, you told me all along this was going to happen. And I was like, no, hold on, man. Maybe this guy, Sean Dirk Patrick, maybe he's like good, it's going to be okay. No, you were right, man. It's not okay. They're lying to the American public. They're lying to the global public. And if the U.S. ain't going to admit it, other countries will. And we have indications of that, which is really interesting. But to get back to brass tacks on this. So in this report, they completely ignored to look at the cases, some of which we brought forward. So, for example, they decided not to look at the Tic Tac UFO case. Is that correct? Like in the report, I read through it pretty quick, but they didn't address it, right?
It doesn't even get mentioned. Probably the most significant UFO case of all time because of the impact it had. That video, along with the testimony of David Fravor and interviews he's done and testimony before Congress, that was a very powerful piece of information that really kickstarted a lot of what we're seeing now, all these investigations and all the media attention into UFOs. That's the one that got it done. They don't make a mention of that. Now, I think there is an implication in this. They only give you two options. AARO says either it's all explainable, prosaic means, or it's a national security program. We can't tell you about it. You have to trust us, which is, preposterous. But Tic Tac, is that a national security program? Do we have that technology back in 2004, 20 years ago? Do we have it now? I think the answer to both is no. We heard from Dave Fravor testifying under oath before Congress, and he was asked, is that ours? Could it be ours? And he gave a very definitive answer that it is not.
Yeah, this is a guy that has a job right now, which is classified, but essentially he would be in a position to know if this was our technology 20 whatever plus years ago. And he made so clear under oath in Congress that this is not our technology. And by the way, he texted me a few days ago. He's like, if this was our technology, it's even a bigger problem. It's a bigger problem because of the amount of money that we're wasting on normal technologies if we had this. But he knows for sure it's not our technology because of his position, where he's in now, what he's doing as a living. But he made a statement under oath like you're talking about. I think we should play that for people so they can really hear what he had to say. Let's just let him speak for himself.
In closing, I would like to say that the Tic Tac object we engaged in 2004 was far superior to anything that we had on time, have today, or are looking to develop in the next 10 years. If we in fact have programs that possess this technology, it needs to have oversight from those people that the citizens of this great country elected in office to represent what is best for the United States and best for the citizens.
So, George, we've got this new government report about UFOs, and anybody that has really looked at this for a long time knows it's complete horseshit. Completely biased. It's attacking witnesses. It's attacking investigators and reporters. It's attacking people like us that have gone in and said, hey, we're gonna try to get to the bottom of this and share it to the American public what's going on. It seems so personal, this report. Do you think there's good people working at AARO and this is all like a mandate from above?
Well, I'm sure there are good people working at AARO. I'm sure there are people there who'd like to do their job. There's no chance that their viewpoint is ever going to make it through. They work for a military organization. They take it from on top. I know that UFO world is united in its steadfast resolve to keep going on this. They won't be deterred by the likes of this AARO report, and that's good. But make no mistake, this report and the headlines it generated did some damage. There were body blows delivered to, I think, the vast majority of people who might be somewhat interested in this subject, but don't cover it very closely. They're not on UFO Twitter every day reading what's going on. They're not following all these podcasts and blogs and things of that sort. They might occasionally read this or that. But, they've got lives. They have families. They have jobs to do. They're not paying attention like we do to this. They were drawn in when it was revealed that there were these secret programs and investigations that they never knew anything about. And when people like Dave Grush came forward, whistleblowers with some incredible stories, testified under oath about crash retrievals, reverse engineering programs, they were interested in that. Now, they don't have to spend all their time on this. They don't pay attention, as I mentioned before. But this past week, they saw headlines that said, Pentagon says there's nothing to it. We don't have any evidence of ETs. We don't have any ET technology. They read that headline. Maybe some of them read the story, and I'd imagine a lot of them have decided to move on. Okay, case closed. No question that is true. As we said before, I think Congress was the real target. We already know that some of these UFO caucus members are not going to give up, but a lot of members are not paying attention. And there are some members who are absolutely opposed to further investigation of this, especially in an election year when Congress has a lot of stuff on their plate, when the control of the White House and the Senate and the House are all up for grabs. They got a lot of stuff on their plates. A few of them have already shown us their cards, when they torpedoed the Schumer amendment. So I think this gives them some initiative and some wind behind their backs, and I think that they will try to kill it. Anyway, that was just a general impression. I think overall, what I come away from this with is this. These guys who have these secrets are not going to give them up. They haven't given them up before. They're not telling Congress what's going on. They're lying to them with impunity again. It's like a wayward husband who's been caught cheating on his wife 3 or 4 times, and she walks in on him, and he's got 2 girls and a goat in bed, and he says, "Honey, this isn't what it seems. Just trust me on this." But if it walks like a goat and it bleats like a goat, it's a goat. No goats here. Trust us, the Pentagon says. I think it's ridiculous. They're asking us to trust their judgment and take their word for it, that none of these things are unexplainable, that it must be our tech or its prosaic explanations.
Yeah, our buddy Chris Sharp wrote a great article that kind of revealing that. Everybody should go look. So Liberation Times, Christopher Sharp, he wrote this cool article just being like, should we trust them? This is what they've done in the past. And it's super interesting to me. You're right. So within popular culture, these headlines in New York Times, in The Intercept, in Washington Post, they do have impact because not everybody's following this, step by step and have been dedicated to following this for quite some time. But anybody that has, it's abundantly clear that this is a whitewash. This is ridiculous. And it's not just like us saying that. It is factually, verifiably, provably just a complete opinionated, it's like an opinion piece more than anything else. It's not a government report. And the cool thing is that the Senate Intelligence Committee, who have been, by the way, people have come to them and told them what's going on because they didn't trust AARO to begin with. I got to say again, you were right, George. You were right, which is that here's a government body looking to create a synopsis of the UFO problem. And you were right from the beginning, which is that it's going to be like Project Blue Book. So look, fine. They put out some report. The real fight is it's in information. The real fight is in the way that this gets out to the media. There's been a covert public influence operation against Congress and the American public. You're seeing a symptom of this. And by the way, that is illegal to do, but it is a covert or maybe overt operation. However, I don't think we're going to let it slide. None of us are going to let it slide because they cannot erase the people that have come forward to the Senate Intelligence Committee, have come forward to people that we know and are going to be coming forward. So it's like, look, we're going to have more hearings. This doesn't even put like a speed bump into what's going on. That's my opinion, at least. Maybe I'm underestimating the power of it, but I think it's not even going to create a speed bump.
You asked, are there good people at AARO? And of course, I think there probably are. We don't know who they are. We had high hopes for Tim Phillips, the acting director of AARO, the guy who replaced Sean Kirkpatrick. And, you and I were told, and we've mentioned on this podcast, we've said, we were told he's a pretty good dude. He's not Sean Kirkpatrick 2.0, that he's has an independent of his own mind on this. I think maybe we were wrong because he came out front and center in making some pretty bold statements. He said, let me quote this one. Phillips told reporters while researching the AARO report, his team was given an unusual level of access to programs and information, which allowed them to more easily complete the work Congress asked them to do. AARO, as designed by Congress, had unprecedented access to classified programs. Nobody blocked where we could go or the questions we asked. How does he know? How does he know he wasn't blocked? How does he know the unknowable? How does he know there aren't SAPs, special access programs, that he wasn't given access to? He's asking us again, believe him, and, trust, take his word for it. This is national security programs, the ones we can't explain. I'm amazed at the job that these media folks did. Amazed and disappointed that they just ran with it. They took this report and ran with it. The Washington Post and New York Times are places where the Dave Grush story went to die. Oh, it just doesn't meet the standards of the Washington Post. They won't take Dave Grush and other whistleblowers' word for it, but they will take AARO's word for it and just run with it, carte blanche.
Yeah, and then there's Dave Grush testifying in front of Congress under oath, and they probably felt like morons because they are morons. But here's the deal, man. They hand-selected a certain amount of journalists that were allowed to be in that room that they know would parrot whatever it is they wanted to be parroted. I mean, it's so obvious to me. It should be so obvious to the public. If you're just paying attention, you're being lied to again. Like, you're being lied to. And if you're okay with that, go live a great life. If you're not okay with it, like I'm not okay with it, and if you're not okay with it, then it's time to fight, man. It's time to make some noise to understand what it is they're trying to tell you, and then counter that narrative with fucking facts. And so I think that over time, that's going to happen when people come forward. I will say a couple shout outs. Like, there was a guy, Robert Powell. He's a friend of yours, George, and a friend of mine too. And this guy's a great researcher, right? I mean, he's great into looking at UFOs, what's going on. He wrote this kind of point by point, what was bullshit about this historic review of UFOs. I really encourage people to go to Twitter or X and find Robert Powell and follow what he's talking about, because he wrote this great kind of counter to this report, and he has way more knowledge than anybody at AARO. Now, I did hear that people at AARO were kind of pressured to follow the status quo, to kind of end at the right point of how public opinion should be. We saw this with the Condon Committee. We saw this. I mean, people were thrown off of that committee because of their public statements, getting caught about saying, look, the Air Force is telling us to end on a certain narrative. So we're just seeing the same thing again. And I really don't think with information technology and what's going on now that people are going to fall for it. But, maybe I'm overestimating people's desire to know the truth about this, but I feel very positive with the more lies they put forward, the more it is, and the more inaccuracies. Didn't they say like Harry Reid was a senator from New Mexico?
New Mexico.
I mean, They can't get the basic facts right. I feel bad for the people that wrote this report or had to be associated with it because I know their names were leaked online. I feel bad for them, man, because this is a whitewash.
Well, I think it's BS on an epic scale. I'm just surprised at a government report would be so hostile and have such inflammatory language. It's pretty clear that somebody there is pretty thin-skinned. They don't like how they've been characterized on UFO Twitter or whatever. I mean, you're a government official running an agency. What the hell do you care what's said on UFO Twitter? But it's clear that, this was influenced by Sean Kirkpatrick, who's made some of these same kinds of statements in the few interviews he's given to friendly media. You mentioned about the things that are left out. I mean, there's some pretty big ones. The UAP task force, it worked a couple of years investigating. It had hundreds and hundreds of unexplained cases that it had really dug into, including some ones that we featured here. We shared some images at various times during the season that were later confirmed to be the real deal. Back in 2018, I made some statements in public that their pilots, military pilots, Navy pilots on the East Coast, Oceania, were seeing these weird things every day. Every single day in their training areas, Oceania over there. And I think people thought I was making it up until later some of these pilots came forward and said, yep. And then we broke some of those images, remember?
I do remember that. And let's go through a series of what we've done this season and address each one to kind of see what has happened over the last year. But before we leave this report, look, they're relying on things like the Roswell report that was created by the Air Force, where there was an assessment of the Roswell event. They're citing things, like you said, like blogs, where they say, blogs aren't real studies. And then they're citing blogs. It's so obvious. It's so transparent that it's almost like painful to have to explain it. A couple things that did stand out to me was, look, the ultimate conclusion of this historic review. By the way, it's part one of two parts, right? Second part should be a real banger, but this is one of two parts. basically they're saying we found no evidence of extraterrestrial origin. Okay, so how do you define extraterrestrial origin? That's something that Robert Powell brought up. Like, how do you define that? Like, what information do you have? Now, people that we secretly met with, in DC, I've talked to a number of those folks we met with, and the response is kind of, well, we're only as good as the information that we have. But I got to call bullshit, because I know for sure some information that AARO had. I know what information they're covering up from direct firsthand witnesses that have testified to you and me, George, and have allowed us to document it. So people that have gone in the classified setting and they have reported to AARO what they know, have also with us gone on record, and it is recorded, what it is that they said they testified to as like a backup for journalists, right? You and I can tell people 100% that they did not reveal all of that, that AARO did not reveal all of that. I have to imagine that those people came to us to have that documented and recorded so that if this happened, that their stories would be heard, that their information would be heard. So it is factual, out, just absolute lies that AARO hasn't heard this testimony and that none of it was convincing. Now, I don't know what extraterrestrial intelligence is. I don't know for sure where UFOs are from, but I do know that their conclusion is absolute bunk. And by them choosing journalists to be there to propagate and parrot their messaging to the American public, it's almost like, it's absolutely ridiculous that they think they can get away with that when we have information technology where it's like everybody can put out the information. They should be a little bit scared. They should be very fucking scared of being caught in these lies. So also, one of the undertones of the report was that everything can be explained with like black technology projects that we have that people misidentified. Do you recall when we had Commander Chad Underwood on our podcast and he told us about what you have to go through if you see a black project and why the Tic Tac UFO was not a black project? Do you recall when we talked about that?
I do. Yeah. We should hear it from Chad, though, at some point.
Yeah. Let's play where Chad talks about the difference of like a black project and why he knows what he saw with the Tic Tac UFO wasn't a black project.
Some people have said, like, oh, it's probably some black project, covert project being conducted by government agency, 3 letters, or, some defense contractor that's operating with specialized kind of clearances. If that were the case, carriers operate in waters that are scheduled months, if not maybe a year in advance. You can't really shift those because you're coordinating an entire battle group, which is not just an aircraft carrier, it's the whole kit and caboodle all together operating as one. You can't just schedule that in a week. That takes a lot of time and a coordination. And if they're going to conduct some sort of, some covert project, we wouldn't be told like, okay, this is what we're testing, because we don't need to know. All we need to know is like, hey, from this time to this time, this is a no-fly zone, even for military aircraft. If you see these things, this is, ignore it. We've scheduled this range from this time to this time, and then we're going to be out of there. And that's just kind of how that test operates.
So interesting as well, in this report, they talked about the gremlins. I was thinking about the movie. Did you hear about that, George?
Yeah. So, all right, there's nothing to this. We can explain them all. We've explained everything. It's either prosaic or it's a secret project that's ours. But at the same time, they've launched this new initiative to create a special UFO detection kits that'll be spread throughout the military, I guess, that'll be designed specifically to gather the kind of information that they apparently don't think we have now.
Right. So they're partnering with the Department of Energy. Have you ever heard about the Department of Energy? Interested
Once
in
or twice. George? Yeah, they've been out here in Nevada a little bit, little place called the Nevada Test Site. Yeah. And there's been a lot of UFO incidents out there around nuclear weapons. Sure.
Yeah. So them and Georgia Tech are developing, deployable, they said configurable censoring suites called Gremlin, designed to conduct hyperspectral surveillance. Such a great term, hyperspectral surveillance, to better capture events. So obviously, if they're actually doing that, which I hope they are, they're going to create these packages that go in briefcases, and what they're going to throw them in an FA-18 and hope that pilots use them. Look, man, if they're doing that, that's awesome. But they're using all these buzzwords that they're going to collect some sort of data. Look, I hope they do, because we do have pilots who have near misses. We have people that we brought on our show that have said this is a real problem. We've had people come on the show telling us that we have spacecraft of unknown origin, and we're going to get into that. But I do hope that they do deploy these gremlin packages to help get more data on UAP.
Yeah, I think that technology would have come in handy for the UAP task force when it was being run by Jay Stratton with Travis Taylor as chief scientist. They and their colleagues cast a wide net, gathered a great deal of information. They were left with a core of really interesting, unexplained cases, some of which we've reported on. Some of those images have gone public as well, and they could not explain them. Apparently, AARO has figured out a way to explain them all. What about OSAP? That whole program for the Defense Intelligence Agency that we've reported on in the past, massive piles of data, the world's largest UFO database with 260,000 cases, was all put together in a usable format. They explained all those? All those are now explained, I guess? There's not one word, a mention of it in this report. OSAP also produced more than 100 highly technical reports. The one that we wanted Congress to see that was an engineering analysis of the Tic Tac case. Not one page, not one mention of it. All that's explainable as well. And then, as you mentioned, Roswell. That's the problem with telling lies. You have to remember the lies that you told. So they say there's no evidence of any UFO crashes. There's no evidence of any cover-up. They forgot that they've already admitted there was a cover-up. Roswell, when you say UFO crashes in this report, they say it's just all circular telephone kind of stuff. The same little group of people telling the story that recirculates around. No. The first report of a UFO crash retrieval came from them. They put out the release in 1947 that said there's a crash saucer and we've got it. And then they changed it to something else. And then years later, they changed it again. And they admitted that it was a cover-up. They're covering up the Mogul balloon. Of course, the Mogul doesn't explain it either, but they've already admitted that they lied, and now they're lying about lying. It's ridiculous.
Lying about lying. I got two questions for you. What do you mean 100-plus page report about the Tic Tac that Congress, what do you mean by that?
OSAP produced more than 100 highly technical, detailed reports about all aspects of the UFO mystery. One of those reports was an engineering analysis that goes into incredible detail about the performance of the Tic Tac, and it explains why it can't be us, how it flies, what it's capable of doing. Based on the information from pilots, they collected information from all the known witnesses, all the available data, and put it together in this report, 141 pages. We wanted to give that to Congress. It's not something that I am authorized to deliver, but I was hoping that they, using their powers, could go after it. I don't think that's happened. As of right now, neither Congress nor the American public has seen any of this stuff, and apparently neither has AARO, because they don't mention anything about it.
So, look, obviously, so we've been accused over the last year when we've been doing Weaponized that this is some government-controlled planned disclosure, that we're part of that we've been leaked information, whether some people say it's not true information, some people say it's true information, but everybody's saying that we're part of this planned disclosure, that the government is slowly trying to disclose the truth about UFOs. I think we can put that to bed now, right?
Well, if we are, let's have some more stuff, please. Please leak us some more stuff that we can help prepare the public for what's coming.
But hold on. Seriously, though, this is like, if this was a planned disclosure by our intelligence agencies and our government, and we were implicit in it, right? If this was a true narrative, then you wouldn't see a report like this, right?
I agree. I mean, that's really the bottom line for me, is that what this report tells me is they are never going to give up this stuff. The goodies.
Not willingly.
The saucers, the craft, the metamaterials, the bodies, if they're there, they're not giving them up, not because of public pressure, not media pressure, not congressional pressure. They're not going to give it up, not willingly. Somebody's going to have to cough it up. Jeremy, we hear it every single day. Shut up. Until you show me the solid proof, the evidence, I don't want to hear any more about it. Well, I'm not entirely sympathetic to that. I feel that there is a lot of evidence in the public realm already to demonstrate that this is a genuine mystery, that it's from somewhere else. But I think now, with this report, I am more sympathetic to that viewpoint, that we need to come up with this stuff. These whistleblowers we've talked to them, we understand their reasons why they're nervous about stepping forward, but one way or another, the public has to see the goods. Don't you think?
Yeah, 100%, man. So my point was just, we were fighting millimeter by millimeter, getting these hearings with these whistleblowers. Of course, there's going to be more. Of course, there are people that are so pissed off now because of the way they were handled by AARO, or even people that didn't go to AARO that are thinking about how to come forward, that have come forward to you and me, that we have documented. So the idea is, how do we get them in so that they can be protected? And I think it's through the ICIG. I think it's by testifying directly to the Senate Intelligence Committee, which some people have done. But there's a cadre of people, and they're armed to the teeth. So I think that this is a nice moment to finally judge AARO and to say, we know what you're up to. We see what you're doing. We used to have your back. We don't anymore. I'm sorry. You fucked yourself. It's done. So now it's like a new path forward, easy way or hard way. I think it's going to be the hard way, George. I don't think it's going to be a controlled disclosure. I think now, because of the position that we've been put into as journalists and what these whistleblowers have been put into, I think it's going to be the hard way, which means people are just going to come out and testify in open Congress. And that's going to be the way. And it's going to be through public opinion. It's going to be through the media. I just don't see a path forward with the path that AARO has put down.
Yeah, I mean, during our recent trip to D.C., we talked to a lot of insiders and intelligence professionals, folks who've been dealing with this for a long time. And they all sort of shared with us the monumental task ahead in trying to nail this down. You have a witness who prepares to come forward. They know about it. Those guys are pretty good at gathering information and keeping certain people under their watchful eyes, and they don't have a whole lot of surprises all the time. Dave Grush probably was a bit of a surprise, but let's say some witness comes forward and says, that hangar right over there, that's where I saw it. By the time he testifies to Congress, as we were told by some folks who know, that stuff could be moved. So, AARO says, we left no stone unturned. We went everywhere the witnesses told us to go. We looked high and low. We didn't find it. Well, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know if it was ever there and got moved. You don't know if it was hidden in some other program. You don't know what a foreign country will do. You're suggesting, Jeremy, that the whistleblowers need to step up and show us some evidence, either to Congress or the public in some way. What if it comes from another country? What if it comes from China or Russia? We know they've been studying this just as we've been doing for a long time and mostly in secrecy. I'd like to see if our government is never going to do it, maybe it has to come from somewhere else.
Well, as we know, Larry Maguire, an MP from Canada, he's got balls like church bells. That guy wrote a memo. It got leaked. He didn't back down from it. He's recently questioning and talking about the UAP thing. I do think that, like, his memo, what it said was like, hey, Canada, we're going to be stuck. The Five Eyes Alliance and the Five Eyes Material Program, right? That it's coming out. You can't put this back. He's like, we need to prepare our citizens for the fact that this stuff has been lied about, and we don't want to have like egg on our face and lie to our citizens in Canada. So I am really hopeful that type of pressure on governments to make sure they don't lose the trust of their citizens. If it doesn't come from the United States, it's going to come from other countries. And why I can say that, why I feel comfortable saying that, George, you and I have been contacted by MPs in multiple nations that are not the United States that want to replicate this and do it better than here in the US. That is fact. So with that being fact, I know there is a very powerful force behind getting this information out. and we're going to assist. We're going to help out in any way we can.
Yeah, I wonder if China made some announcement, if it would have the same impact as the U.S. making it. I suspect not. It could be dismissed as some Chinese propaganda or something. It's an interesting dichotomy, or maybe a contradiction in terms when you think about it, is that the U.S. public on this issue does not trust its own government. And yet the only way that it can feel like it's been vindicated, that the topic is real, is if the U.S. government comes out and acknowledges it. It's kind of weird. You're waiting for dad to come forward and tell you something, but you're not sure he's ever going to do it.
So listen, man, let's record scratch right here. We're going to pause. I really want to spend some of this episode talking about what we experienced over the last year. Look, we threw down. We're going to do Weaponized. We're going to put out everything that we can. We're going to try to put out a bunch of materials. We're going to have guests on that have admissions that they want to admit to us. Let's really do that. We had a really interesting year of Weaponized, a season 1, all the way up to episode 52, because 51 is somehow top secret. But we've had a great year, and I want to talk to you about that. But nothing explains a year better than memes. And there have been some on fire memes this year. Have you seen some of them?
Oh, yeah. You make sure that everybody sees them, Jeremy.
I do. I love memes, man. Memes are going to change the world one day. Memes are going to bring us UFO disclosure. Memes are the path forward, man. It's the way. So there's one guy that I really love that does the memes, Fettuccine Split, and he is awesome, man. He does some funny ass memes. There's some good ones, and then there are ones that are meant to torment and hurt us. And unfortunately, I'm a complete psychopath, or what do they call it? We don't feel emotion. Sociopath, yeah. So I don't really feel it, but I think they're funny. So I do feel joy. I think they're funny. So I want to show you some of the memes that were created about you and me. So yeah, George, I don't know if you remember when we started, but it was we called it Weaponized because we're just going to talk about anything that excites us, anything that sparks our curiosity and imagination. And we had lofty goals. I'm sure you would have loved to have, one of the Beatles on or something. We ended up talking a lot about UFOs, and somebody made this little parody clip where it's yeah, sure, you're not going to be talking too much about UFOs. We say UFOs so many times in the first episode. Check out this little meme clip somebody made. So on this podcast, it's fair to say we're going to talk a lot about
UFOs. Full-time into UFOs.
Over 100 UFOs. The UFOs.
The UFO world came to my door.
There's UFO sightings and more.
Okay. This is really interesting.
What is your best piece of evidence that UFOs are real? Show it to me. Show it to me. Put it in my hands.
The sexual things that aliens had done.
Fuck this.
Yeah. This field is a mess. This topic is an absolute disaster.
All this shit about UFOs.
UFOs may not be extraterrestrial.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Corbell. I'm really into this, but I'm not a crazy person. I really want to know the truth. I've got a few things that I've been doing.
The hell was that?
UFOs.
UFOs every day.
There were some great memes. I mean, there was this dude, Fettuccine Split, or AKA Uplifting Tweets. And this guy just had some hilarious memes. So I was thinking maybe, Michael, can you show us some of these memes? Okay, so there we go. So remember that? UFO debunkers beware. The one where it's me, you, Joe Rogan, a bunch of people in Predator, the movie.
That's right.
All saying UFO debunkers beware. It was so funny. We had some from movies. Do you remember?
Pulp Fiction. Yeah, Pulp Fiction. That's a good one.
So, look at that one. Hold on. Pause for a second. So tell me about that.
Colonel Phil Corso. Yeah. We dug up through the old files, previously unseen interviews of Colonel Corso that I had recorded back as part of the NIDS operation, Bigelow's operation, that I was a consultant to them for a while and set up some projects, including visiting with Colonel Corso, who made quite an impression back then.
So do you recognize that one?
That's not a good look for you, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's me over a bowl of cereal saying grifties, like grifter. All we're doing is trying to report the news. And then there was this obsession this year with me wearing a tinfoil hat because I said, put on your battle helmets the tinfoil ones too. I was making a joke. So there were all these memes of me having a tinfoil hat, putting eye drops into Sean Kirkpatrick of LSD, like in Clockwork Orange. I mean, just some funny stuff.
Warner Brothers cartoons. That's how they
Warner
end.
Brothers cartoons.
That's all, folks.
Okay, folks, because everybody said that the pyramid, triangular by angle of observation, that we reported on the Pentagon's report. We obtained and released slides from an unclassified but not released report that your pal Jay Stratton, I believe, authored, that talked about the shape and what it was on these swarms in 2019. But it's bouquet, folks. I thought that was pretty funny. But then you get the nice ones. You get the Godfather.
That's the way it should be. Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. That's a good one. MIB.
Men in Black. I like this one.
Mad Max.
Fravor. Look at Fravor. Looking at the Tic Tac. That's a really nice. 2001 Space Odyssey.
With Rogan. Yeah.
With Rogan. And then I love this one. This is like Karate Kid, right? Like you're the sensei, Miss Miyagi, and you're teaching me how to like hold the orb because it's the year of the sphere. That was pretty good. This is like me having a panic attack because every time I go on the news, I'm like, aren't you hearing what we're saying? Like, it's so great. So those are some good memes throughout this year. I really do think that memes will change the world one day. And I'm glad that people engaged and made some fun. Look, this should be fun. You've always said to me, if this isn't fun, what are we doing? This should be fun. And I think online it contributes to that fun to have people create, even derogatory memes. I think are pretty funny.
All that stuff comes with the territory. It should be fun. Some people take it incredibly seriously and personal. And, you have to try to resist that because we're in it for the long haul. This is not something that's going to be decided in a week. You have to have thick skin and you have to have a sense of humor. And, sometimes this stuff wears you down a little bit, Jeremy, when it gets really personal, as we've experienced this year. But you have to keep going.
For sure. And I think you've kind of taught me that, the basics that, no matter what's going on, you want, if you believe that what you're doing is correct and you believe that it is accurate and credible, you got to put the information out there and see where it falls. And we've done our best. We're not flawless with stuff. We're doing our best. But wow, I mean, we've really had some highlights along the way. But I just want to go through some of the episodes for you and see what you recall from them. So I think it was episode number 2. I'll pull it up right now. Episode number 2 of Weaponized, UFO Swarms, a Military Perspective, with guest John Gutierrez. Do you remember that episode?
Yeah, it's notable because I can't recall an active duty Navy commander coming on any program anywhere to talk about UFOs and events and how he and other folks in his line of work view this stuff.
That's right. And I know that a lot of people were warned from going on radio with you. And a lot of people were warned on, kind of participating in anything we do publicly, military people. So I thought it was really cool. Not that he knew any of that, but it was really cool that this guy, John Gutierrez, decided to come on and decided to talk with us about his perspective, a military perspective on UAP. And if I look back at that episode too, a few things really highlight for me. I mean, first of all, here's a guy that is in charge of other people. Like he is worried about safety. He's worried about this issue because he's been told you need to report it. You need to be worried about it or concerned about it. And that disconnect between what happens on the ground compared to kind of like the public understanding. So he really kind of alerted us to a bunch of that stuff. In that episode, you and I were able to obtain testimony from a number of firsthand direct witnesses to the 2019 swarms. So that's what that episode was about. In 2019, off the coast of California, 10 Navy warships were swarmed by over 100 UFOs, UAP. We never recovered one of them. Our Navy, years after, says we don't know who were operating these units. Obviously, we obtained footage and we obtained radar data, we obtained thermal, we obtained infrared, we obtained deck footage. George, this is like a case in UFO history that I think is one of the most well documented and confirmed by the Pentagon as being unknowns, unidentifieds, UAP. This case is so important. We have so many types of footage that we were able to put out. When you dropped the images from Oceana of the acorn, the sphere, and the metallic blimp with payload, and right after that, we dropped all of these videos, again, from radar to thermal to infrared to deck footage. This is like the first time in history that I know of where we have all these different types of data from radar to thermal to infrared to deck footage. It's amazing. So this is a case that is indicative of many of the swarm cases. People probably missed it, but we reported on a Japan UFO case that had very similar characteristics. These swarm cases are ubiquitous around the globe. They're happening all the time. I mean, all the time. Just because we report on one case, because we've got a bunch of footage, doesn't mean it's the only case. So that episode 2 with John Gutierrez, what is it that you think people should take away from that case or from that episode of Weaponized?
Well, not to beat a dead horse or a dead arrow in this case, but the AARO report makes no mention of this whatsoever, as far as I saw, and maybe I overlooked it, but the assumption it lets the public reach is that they've explained it somehow, that this technology is explainable. It is not. The UAP task force was really on top of this stuff. They had people on the ground, as we know, almost immediately right after that swarm. They boarded the ship, a Chinese ship that was suspected of maybe launching these strange drones. There were no drones on that ship. The ship didn't launch them. They don't know where they were launched from. They don't know where they went to. They don't know how they fly. That Omaha sphere, that went along with the ship for an hour. It was tracked for an hour. And then it appeared to go into the water. It had no wings. It had no tail. It had no rudder. It had no exhaust, no plumes, no indication of how it was flying along. And then it disappeared. What the hell was it? Now, AARO lets us assume that it's been explained. It has not. The triangle stuff, the pyramid stuff, you take it away and explain why that was an important evidence, because it is not bokeh. We know from Jay Stratton and Travis Taylor, they looked at that. They analyzed it. They had other optics experts, PhDs, that looked at it. It is not, right?
Yeah. So beyond that, it is not bokeh. And I know people love to think that. And, here's the deal. There were other sensor systems and there were other people that had more information on it. I know that's frustrating to hear, but it is true. And so I'm going to stand firm on that it was not bokeh. Look, even a triangular shaped craft looks triangular with bokeh triangle effect, but it wasn't. This is, I mean, how many times I got to say it? This is the PBS-14. This is what was used on the filming of that event. On this is a circular lens in order to create, or a circular aperture. In order to create a bokeh effect where it's triangular, you would need to tape this off. They don't come like that, like people are trying to show online. It's so funny, man. But I'm not going to argue that point to death. It's okay. It's okay. Anything that is triangular shaped is pyramid and three-dimensional reality. We are reporting the news. We are reporting what was shown in those classified but unclassified now files that we were able to obtain and put out. Whatever it is, don't diminish the larger effect. This wasn't one image. This wasn't one ship on the USS Russell. This was 10 Navy warships confirmed. And how did we confirm it? Oh, well, we found people on numerous ships, some of which we got audio testimony in and put in episode 2, where their whole job was to find out the origin. Was it coming from the Bass Strait like Wikipedia says? And we know Wikipedia's got some problems. Yeah. No, it wasn't, because we have the direct people whose job it was to define if they were coming on or off the Bass Strait, which couldn't house that many drones of that size. And back to your point of the spherical image, you said for 1 hour an object was around the ship. But let's remember, it was hundreds of objects around 10 Navy warships. We're showing you one piece of footage, but the radar showed you multiple, I think up to 14. So it's like the Tic Tac UFO case. The Tic Tac UFO case, it wasn't a tic tac. It was multiple tic tacs over weeks, docking with something under the water, a USO. So that's so important for people to remember. It's not the Tic Tac UFO case. It's the Tic Tacs, the multiple over weeks that were studied by our government, and then we're docking with something larger and bigger under the water, which looks spherical because of the water displacement, which Commander Fravor just straight up said in the first interview ever that he did, long form, audio recorded. We put that out, George. He talked about it. So I just want people to remember that it's a much bigger thing. So with the bouquet, you can make jokes or whatever, that's fine. But it's not. And I'm really standing strong on that we have good evidence and we have good sources and we have good stance to say that. But remember, it's larger. It's a much larger event with like 10 Navy warships.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that case is still unknown. It's still unexplained. They don't know where they came from or where they went or how those things fly. We'd better hope it's non-human intelligence. It's not the Chinese, because we'd be getting our asses kicked right now.
But because you've read the technical reports, maybe 100+ pages from the DIA. You've read that, right, George?
I have. Yes, I have. And I really think it'd be useful if that information could be made public.
I agree. And so you tried, and when we're fighting to get stuff like that public, there was a piece of encouragement. We did have a meeting in DC where we met with somebody that said that they were able to acquire those DIA documents. The DIA has said that we don't know where they are. Do you believe that they were able to acquire them?
I don't know. I'll take his word for it at this point. That you've seen it. That was a surprise to me, and there's a way I can confirm that, but I haven't done it yet.
Okay. It would be interesting because, look, at some point they should just get a package in the mail with all of those documents. Don't you agree?
That'd be a big package. That'd be, that'd be several packages, boxes.
But then in episode 3, George, we did an interview with Jay Stratton. Can you just remind people who Jay Stratton is and what that interview is called? The Pentagon Top UFO Hunter was the episode number 3 of Weaponized. What did we show? What was that about? Who's Jay Stratton? What's going on?
Jay Stratton maybe has been more involved with UAP, UFO research than any person in the U.S. government. He was a naval intelligence guy, had a distinguished career, rose to become an intelligence officer, worked with Office of Naval Intelligence, then with DIA. He was at DIA when James Lacatski became interested in the UFO topic because of the Skinwalker book, The Hunt for the Skinwalker. And the two of them consulted about how to proceed. James Lacatski pitched the creation of a program. Harry Reid got the $22 million to fund it, and OSAP was born. Jay Stratton was the first guy to investigate the Tic Tac. He's the first guy to talk to the airmen. He's the first guy to ask for evidence and data and put it all together in a 14-page report that I was able to release years later, 2018, I think. And then Jay Stratton stayed on with as a consultant to OSAP. He went to the ATIP program after that, a much smaller focus, sort of a working group within the Pentagon and other agencies that looked at military cases. Then he was pulled back in after the New York Times article in 2017. The Navy and intelligence agency said, "Hey, we need your help on this. You've had some experience working on it. Would you be willing to create something new?" He created what became the UAP Task Force. It was operating before Congress gave it an official name and it had an official program, but Jay was there through that whole thing. He put together an incredible network of contacts throughout the federal government, started collecting hundreds and hundreds of cases. He created a system to gather information. He changed the term UFO to UAP so that there's less stigma. He got the Navy to go ahead and make it easier for service members, pilots, and air crew to go ahead and report it. He's had an incredible impact on this. And just when he was supposed to put together this report to Congress, they yanked him out. And then he went on to work in private industry right now, again with his friend, Dr. Travis Taylor. But the guy knows his stuff. He's seen it all. And we got the only on-camera interview with him. And boy, did he fill in a lot of blanks for us.
But we only released a very small part of that interview.
That's true.
I wonder if, is there like another little segment, because it was hours, man. Is there another little segment that we can release to the public just of like what he said about UFOs and his work trying to bring this to the American public?
I'll have to take a look at the transcript and pick one. But yeah, we've got a lot of stuff from Jay. I just want to make sure it's okay with him. But in the course of this, by the time this program airs, this episode, we'll have picked one. How's that?
Okay, so you're either going to see it right now or you're not.
The green footage from the USS Russell, which that George and I obtained and released. So somebody filmed a screen and shouldn't have done that, but that's not me. It's journalists. There's shield law. Obtained and released. But you've seen it. They played it in Congress, right? Okay. The question about that is, was that, to the best of your knowledge, is that a camera artifact of the iris? The shape that you see in the green footage, we'll call it green, is that an artifact of the iris?
To my knowledge, based on 3 PhDs, it is the shape in that video is the shape that you're seeing, and that it is a pyramid, and that it is self-illuminating.
It's a what?
It's that illumination is coming from the object itself. That's my understanding based on what I had from the text.
3 PhDs. You got 3 PhDs. You got 3 PhD people to look at it.
I got 3 PhD people to look at it.
Were they like optical physicists?
Yes.
But why go so far to show one video instead of 3 other videos that are out in the public that are corroborative visual evidence of one event, and then say they're drones? And I know who named them drones. So why did they do that?
I don't know.
Fair to say, if it was a known U.S. technology,
I would have admitted that, right?
Right.
I said it was unknown.
Dr. Colm Kelleher first came on with us for episode 5 of Weaponized, the science of animal mutilations. It was a 2-part episode, but Dr. Kelleher, he made some astonishing admissions. He was one of the first on Weaponized to make some astonishing just revelations about what our government has. Does our government have flying saucers? Do they have craft from non-human intelligence or unknown origin in our possession? It wasn't in the first cut where he talked about that. It was the second episode, but he admitted that, straight up admitted it.
Yeah, he didn't want to talk about this. Obviously, it is sensitive. He had a security clearance. He's worried about saying too much and crossing a line, but eventually he coughed it up.
Does our government have downed UFOs from unknown origin that they've been trying and are trying to reverse engineer and exploit those technologies, understand the physics, and understand that technology? Do we have that to work with?
I can't talk about that, but the answer is yes.
We released a bunch of stuff in this season of episodes of Weaponized. So one was like Mosul Orb. So that was April 16th, 2016. And this was over Mosul in northern Iraq. Now, this image of the Mosul Orb, I just want to go over with people. So this is this is a full motion video, which means it has a bunch of different ways in which it's looking at this object. How crazy was that, George? So we got there was somebody leaked to us an image from a classified server, and it was of a Mosul orb. It was like of this spherical metallic image that had been debated within the intelligence community for like a long time. So we were able to make that public. Do you have any thoughts on the Mosul orb and just kind of like what that was like getting that out?
Well, this is what comes to mind for me is it is not us saying that's a UFO, that's a UAP. It's not us saying and deciding with our expertise, which is pretty low bar, that this is a genuine unknown. It's the U.S. military. It's the intelligence community. They looked at it. They can't figure out what the hell it was. It's not a water spot. It's not a dip in the road. We got our first dash of ridiculous debunking explanations with that one, but they don't hold up. The fact is, our military, our intelligence community said that's a UFO, not us. We didn't say it.
Yeah, and so the Mosul orb, what was interesting to me was that when we released it, right after, it was like Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick did this like UFO, congressional briefing, and he put out some like other orb that was moving over Iraq. Why didn't AARO and Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick release the video of the Mosul orb and instead release some other weird video of an orb. Like, I'm grateful for it. Like, it's cool to have that out. But why didn't they do it? We were asking them, hey, this is now public. Journalists have it. It's out of your control. There's nothing with national security. Put it out. What do you make of this with all these hearings, how they're always like taking things that we put out and then they're like showing another version of them? What do you make of that?
They're trying to dilute it, I think. I think the reason they didn't release the real stuff is because Jay Stratton is not there anymore. During the time, and I know just to reemphasize this, Jay Stratton has never crossed the line. He's never leaked stuff to us. I know him, but when he's in that position as UAP Task Force Director, he's not leaking information to us. The difference between him and what we have now is when we got stuff that is from a report that he prepared for intelligence community and the defense community, he acknowledged it. He made Susan Goff. He made her admit it, own up to it, which is very different from Sean Kirkpatrick and what we have now, who they won't admit everything, won't acknowledge anything, and pretend it's all explainable and it all go away.
Yeah, let's make that clear. So we would never have somebody on our show who leaked us information.
No.
There's a difference between a source and a witness. So we like to bring witnesses on Weaponized because they can fill in the voids. We would never, not that we even know our sources. I'm going to say it like that. Not that we even know our sources, but if we did, we would never have a source on the show. We would have a witness on the show. So having Jay Stratton on as a witness, as somebody that ran the UFO programs through the United States government, I mean, that was a great third episode. I was like stoked to have him on there, even though we recorded in Huntsville, Alabama and brought it back. Just a really great episode. So look, Mosul orb, very powerful.
By the way, Jeremy, before you move on from the orb, is that our first Department of Justice investigation? Is that what prompted it?
No. There was the 2019 events and your releases from the FA-18s, which was the 3 images, the acorn, the sphere, or the circle or whatever, and then the
metallic blimp
with payload. That's when our Department of Justice was investigating sources, which I understand. They should do it because people that leak information, you don't know if they're going to leak other stuff. I get it. But as journalists, we don't have to participate. Like, that's cool. Go ahead and do it. But no, that was not the first investigation, George. There have been
or last. Yeah, but let's not talk about that yet. So here we go. So we did the Mosul orb. And I think that was a very important kind of moment for us when it comes to getting stuff out to the public and getting the public up to date with what we know. But something that people kind of might not remember was the Baghdad Phantom. So do you remember that episode is called the Baghdad Phantom, George? And that was episode number 8 in Weaponized, the Baghdad Phantom, Alien Con, and the UFO Silver Bullet. Do you remember that? I do. Yeah, I remember this thing. We have, I think, clips of it. We don't have the actual full sequence, but we do have clips that show its progression across the frame, the camera angle. And it looks kind of like a torpedo. I thought, well, maybe it's a missile when we first saw it. But again, this was an object that was investigated, that is considered to be a UAP, unexplained, and it's serious because of where it was recorded.
Yeah, and also, so I think we got 7 images because to pull a video off a classified server, I'm sure is difficult. But when people release like images, or when we obtain images, we can kind of string them together. And what we're showing is this object that was thoroughly vetted by our intelligence communities as being like not known. This is not known. And this is something that doesn't have a traditional propulsion on it. And it's moving, through the viewfinder of, I think it was a Reaper drone, if I recall. But this was really a heavy lift to get this out to the public. So we got it to the public. And more importantly, it's kind of like putting the Department of Defense on notice, which is like, if you're going to lie about this, here's some of the footage that you have classified UAP. You have classified it UFO. This is not us. You've classified it as UFO. And so getting it out there was kind of interesting. So that was another kind of interesting moment in Weaponized when we were able to obtain and release images from the Baghdad Phantom. So then we moved to episode number 18, the Silent Triangle of 29 Palms. And man, did we get raked over the coals for just bringing forward a case that we vetted for a long time to make sure we had numerous witnesses and make sure that we had specialists in ordnance that came forward and said, we don't think these were flares. That was like a big deal when we brought it forward. We got raked over the coals on that. I'm really glad we reported on it, though, because that case is not closed. People are still reaching out to us to this day. I'm trying to figure out the best I can to bring, information forward. Whatever it was that happened at 29 Palms, it was not a usual event.
I thought it was interesting that the Pentagon, which clearly monitors our stuff, but we know there are certain people and social media who are ready to pounce every Monday or Tuesday morning. The Pentagon helpfully released 161 photos of flares recorded at that same desert and at that same base. Do they think that all 161 photos were taken of the same flares? The 29 Palms, they had 129 photographers of the same incident. They just released a whole bunch of flares. Obviously, we are aware that flares are used at that base. The people we're talking to, who are our witnesses, who we included testimony from them, admit they work with flares, but that is also their expertise. They know what the hell a flare looks like. And they said these were not flares. Even if you can figure out a way that the alignment sort of looks like something that had appeared in the sky there before, the witnesses who were on the ground told us different. We don't have a dog in that fight. I don't care if it turns out it's flares. If it is flares, cross it off the list. That's the way this research is supposed to go. It doesn't matter. We do not claim expertise in analyzing images. I don't anyway. I don't think you do either.
Yeah, I don't. No, I don't. But I do claim expertise in collecting sources and information and bringing it to the public in a slow, methodical way. And, we wouldn't put it out frivolously. And look, it is always good to find out the answers to cases that, we're not like beating the drum saying like, you got to believe this. We're trying to bring information forward and trying to bring good information forward. If something does become, understood, that's great, man. That is a step forward for what we're doing. But the issue is, there's a lot of issues, but the issue is we have all these people that were there. Like I have this image of all these, soldiers or whatever you want to call them, like standing out, looking up at this. None of them, like if people just listen to the episode, just go back, listen to the episode. It was episode number 18 and then episode number 19. Listen to those episodes. Like, listen to the witness testimony. You have to have a better understanding than just what you read in like tiny little clips of social media. I highly encourage people to do that. The good news is this: once you report on a case, people continue to come to you with information. So I do think over time, we're going to learn a lot more about that. So a big episode for me was episode number 38, Inside the DIA's Secretive UFO Investigation, with the guest, Dr. James Lacatski and Dr. Kelleher. And I specifically remember the head of the DIA UFO program getting on our show. And for the first time in audio visual recording, him admitting, Dr. James Lacatski, head of the DIA's UFO program, admitting that we had a craft of unknown origin that our government has acquired, that the DIA has acquired. Doesn't this fly in the face of what Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick said in his report? Like, isn't this proof positive that we have a DIA guy telling us we have a flying saucer, although it was shaped more like an egg, that we have that thing?
You're telling us, you told us, because you were allowed to tell us, that our government has a UFO in its possession and has been able to access the inside of it, right?
Yes.
That's the only interview in which Dr. Lacatski has appeared on camera and said this. He said it in a book that I co-wrote with him, but he admits it. We've got it. It's ours. We finally managed to get inside of it. He doesn't go beyond that, though. We had a pretty spirited conversation back and forth with him, trying to get him to say a little bit more, like, where do we get it? Where's it kept? Can you tell us any more about it? How do we get into it? And he wouldn't budge, but I suspect that he'll say something, give us more details sometime in the future. Since then, though, that's it. That's the only interview he's done.
You and I did 3 other major releases So one of them was the Syria Dome UAP, and people can look that up on our episodes, the Syria Dome UAP. Man, this thing looked like Kermit the Frog. It was wild. But if you remember, the reason why we brought it up was because we know that we fired upon it. It was a historic firing upon a UAP. And in our episode, we discussed what it takes for the U.S. government or allied governments to fire on unknowns or UAP. This is all in kind of the aftermath of what we saw about unidentifieds being fired upon across America over the course of days. So if you remember the Syria Dome UAP, what did you think of that case, George?
Well, you mentioned why it's important, because we know they did fire on it, which is unusual. I mean, you know, when you look at the 2019 incursions, the swarm around those 10 Navy ships, the question we always get asked is, why didn't the Navy shoot them down? Well, there's some steps you have to go through, and this is a good example of when those steps are, when the criteria are met, and when they can be fired on. We know that in the trips to Russia that I made, is that for a while, the Russians tried to intercept these UFOs and tried to shoot them down until 3 of their warplanes were knocked down. And they put out an article, an order that said, leave them alone. They have incredible capacities for retaliation. I don't know what the policy of the U.S. military is now regarding UFOs, UAP, at what point do you shoot them down or try to shoot them down, or do you just leave them alone? But this was a good example of a case where they tried to bring it down.
So in a recent series I did called UFO Revolution, and it's on Tubi, it was made by TMZ Productions. There were 2 things that you and I decided let's put out through Weaponized and into the popular media. The first one, I think, well, let's talk about the second one. Second one was the Chandelier UAP. And if people watched UFO Revolution, they'll hear the voice of an intelligence officer who is telling us that this object, this image that we have from a video, right? This image is of something that has baffled the intelligence community. They call it the Chandelier UAP because it's like if you lay on your back and you look up at a chandelier, this thing was moving in a very strange motion, but it was the heat patterns were so bizarre on it that we didn't have any U.S. asset that we know is like that. This is not a black project of ours. This is not from any known foreign government that we know of. And also, it had unique signatures. So what is it that is propelling? It was called the Chandelier UAP. And people should look at that image, allow it to burn an indelible imprint into their mind. You're going to be hearing more about the Chandelier UAP, but that image right there was something the public did not have before, and we were able to release it on Weaponized and also through the show. That was an interesting one, right?
Yeah, and you know, I didn't know what to make of it. I still don't. I have no expertise in looking at something like that. I know a lot of people tried to explain it as a diffraction, like we're looking at the back of a missile going away from us. Based on what you've told me from other sources that we've talked to, they don't think that is an explanation that works.
No. So that would be very clear. It'd be a plume that looks a certain size. That's not diffract. I don't know what people are saying online, but they're fucking wrong about that. So it's just a matter of like, here's an image that you didn't have before that is classified a UAP by the United States government. It was actually put into a SIPR archive that was supposed to remain anonymous and like hidden. People were never supposed to see this, even in the IC, but instead we got alerted about it. So I thought it was really interesting. And then finally, George, we released the Jellyfish UAP, the weirdest UFO or UAP video that we had ever seen. And yes, it did take us 3.5 years to find direct sources, to speak with people, to get them on record, to find out it was legitimate. And we did that. So, man, the debunkers were like, oh, it's like bird shit on lens. Well, very clearly we showed it was rotating and it wasn't that. Oh my gosh, what a weird UFO or UAP encounter. By the way, this is something that we have seen evidence of being at nuclear test sites. So we thought it was very important. I'm really glad we got it out to the public. I hope we're able to get more information on this down the line.
Oh, I think we can say with some confidence that we'll have more information. You know, that made quite a dent in the heads of debunkers around the world who just were fighting with falling over themselves to come up with one bogus explanation after another. I've seen a lot of people on social media say, oh, yeah, it must be balloons. It's balloons. That explains it. It's not balloons, okay? Do you think that our U.S. military, the intelligence folks who are there, this is a really secure base? They see these images all the time. They don't see something like that. I know it is frustrating because we are aware that there is additional footage of this thing doing some amazing things that we do not have. But it does exist. Someday it might come forward. Obviously, AARO doesn't have an explanation for this, and AARO didn't get that footage either. So it'd be really great. That's another example of what they skipped in this report.
It is. So look, kind of that was some of the highlights through our first season, George, of Weaponized, right? There are things that just keep us up at night, things that we can't put down, like studying UFOs. On the show, we're going to cover all the things that do that.
Ideas that challenge reality itself.
I kept rolling that around in my head and rolling it around in my head. It took me. It took me.
And in between, there were a bunch of cops. There were tanks and armored personnel carriers on the move. Pretty much every day we were there.
It seems like it's pretty unlikely that we're the only beating hearts, but...
And they were pulsing too, but at a different tempo than the rest of the craft.
Than the body of the craft. And that was the thing to me was, it was almost comical. You see our studio?
That's very cool. It's a big honor. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Corbell and others have been collecting data on this issue for years.
Because there's a real concern out there. We got guys in the air coming across things that we don't know what they are.
I'm John Lear. Today is my birthday. I'm 71 years old. And everything you think you know is an immaculate deception.
Flying saucers, flying discs that are out there.
An absolute revolution.
What would you think?
The more you find out, the less you know.
In some interview talking about how he thinks there's a higher probability that we're in a simulated universe than not.
UFO landing on the White House lawn and that being the first contact, right? We've spoken to non-human intelligence. I mean, ChatGPT isn't perfect, but it can hold a great conversation. I mean, it can write pretty good books,
This is weaponized. This is weaponized.
This is weaponized. Breaking down stigma will take time.
Are they still abducting people? Answer, yes, they are still abducting people.
Whistleblowers and people that have provided tangible evidence of direct storage locations to non-human intelligence, craft, or parts.
Just preposterous answers. They can't even deny they have these materials in their possession. And like you said, I think this is the biggest acknowledgement, unspoken acknowledgement, that there is something there that they are trying to hide.
So that was great. Now we do have a missing episode number 51. And I do wonder I guess I don't have the clearance to know. Is that what you're saying, George? What's going to happen?
True. Yeah. You're not allowed in Groom Lake, and we're not quite sure we want you to even be asking these kind of questions as usual. Okay. But, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But for a while, we're going to be on break, and we don't know what season 2 holds or where it might show up or when or if. But if we can, we'll be back with more. This mystery's not going away. I mean, as I said before, this report from AARO makes it clear these guys are not going to give this stuff up. They're not going to cough it up, not voluntarily. They're never going to admit it. There is never going to be a day when the president comes forward and says, yeah, we've got UFOs, so what? It's not going to happen. Not unless they're forced. Not unless they are forced to do it because of disclosure, and whistleblowers or other governments or evidence that comes forward, and we will do our best to get that evidence and present it.
Never before have I wanted you to be so wrong. You're like, never is this going to happen. Look, man, I just got to say, we have made some serious progress. If you look at what has happened just over the last 12 months with Weaponized and what we were able to provide to the public that they didn't have before, that is now part of the public discourse. Like, man, we got to keep going, George. We got to be able to make these waves so that we can start to have a rational conversation about this. And, you say, we're not sure we're going to do more. George, come on, man. If I told you were going to be retired tomorrow, you wouldn't have it. You would fight that tooth or nail. I don't believe for 1 second that we're not going to do more of these. I suspect we're going to be right back.
We'll see. I'm old.
I'm old. That's not a retort. That's not a retort. So look, man, to let our audience know a couple things. So there is a last punch we're going to throw. And I want people to know that for season 1, we're going to do that. We're going to do it on our own timeline. But we're going to have more UFO hearings. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't run Congress. I don't know for sure. But every indicator I have is that people are embedded in finding out how they've been lied to. And this report pushed them over the edge. This report pushed everybody over the edge. They're like, this is bullshit. This historic report from AARO, it's the same thing as Project Blue Book. Push it under the rug, nothing to see here, and move on. No, man. No, that it's not happening. So I do know we're going to have more hearings. It's a matter of when and where. But do you feel the same way from what we've been in the same meetings? Are we going to have more hearings?
Well, I know that there are people devoted to that who are working really hard to make it happen. I also know that there are some key players in Congress who don't want it to happen. It depends a lot on the election, what happens in the upcoming election, who the speaker is. The Tim Burchett and some of his colleagues have said that this speaker is sympathetic to it. The creation of a special select committee that might have investigatory powers to ask questions, put people under oath, go into a skiff. I hope that happens. But we know there are some big players in the House who don't want it to happen. So we'll just have to wait and see who prevails. But I hope so.
Okay. Well, look, man, you could say this is the synopsis of season 1 of Weaponized. But I already know in a few weeks, we're filming another episode. So it's just a matter of when you decide to put it out. So I'm just saying, we'll be back, babe.
Never have so few had so much to tell, but could say so little.